Hey guys, this is the Casual Fan. This weekend we have the Italian Grand Prix, and this video is about the preview and predictions for Ferrari's home race weekend. So without further ado, let's cut to the chase and let's get to the preview and predictions for the Italian Grand Prix. Now the video will be divided into two parts. The first part is the preview, the second is the predictions. Now if you've seen my previous preview and predictions video, we'll follow a similar format. The preview part will be divided into three parts. The first part is the key storylines, then we look at the form guide, and finally, we take a look at the MVP of the weekend, the driver or the team that would attract the biggest spotlight. Then, after that, we move to the predictions where I give my take on how I expect the weekend to go ahead. Now, I'm not going to predict who is going to finish on which positions. I think that's foolish. That's a waste of time for you and me because most of the times it does not come true. So what I'll try to share is how I expect the weekend to unravel. So yes, let's begin first of all with the preview for the Italian Grand Prix. Now in the preview, let's begin with the key storylines. First of all, we have, Max Verstappen has leveled Sebastian Vettel's record of 9 consecutive wins. Next up, he's targeting beating that record, a record that has stood for 10 years now. So yes, this weekend, quite a few eyes will be on whether Max can get it done. To be fair, how easy he's made the last 9 wins look, it's hard to bet against him. Now there are maybe a few discussions that maybe Sebastian Vettel might be there in Monza on the eve of Verstappen beating his record, but again we need to wait and see if that happens. Next up, we have Ferrari's home race, and yeah, Ferrari is coming to Monza on the back of a poor weekend in Zandvoort. Charles Leclerc had a poor race weekend. He crashed in qualifying. Even in the race, he had contact with Oscar Piastri early in the race. Then the pit stop debacle. Then what happened in the race we all saw. Carlos Sainz also did not have... Honestly, it was not that good a race for him as well, because at the end of the day, if you're getting overtaken by an Alpine en route to a podium, it does not look good. So yes, coming into the Italian Grand Prix, a lot of expectations around Ferrari, and I think the team will be hoping it can, even if it emulates what it did last season, which was Leclerc getting pole position on Saturday and then on Sunday finishing second behind Max. I think the team will be very happy. Whether it can get it done or not, we'll have to wait and watch. Now the third key storyline is the pecking order behind Red Bull, because it has confused almost everyone. Last week we had, out of the blue, Aston Martin's upgrade working like a charm and Fernando Alonso finishing second. The week before that, we had Ferrari on podium. The week before that, we had McLaren on podium and Mercedes challenging as well. So this is where the whole thing stands. In the last 4 races, we've had, I think, 5 different teams on podiums. And if you have 5 different teams on podiums in the last 4 races, what it really shows is that behind Red Bull, it's unpredictable. Anything can happen. And I think everyone will keep an eye on how probably the Aston Martin's upgrades work in Monza, and even how McLaren fares, because the team did struggle in Spa, and the high downforce wing that it has, it does not really work in these conditions. So yes, something to keep an eye on. Next up, let's take a look at the form guide. Now, when we are talking about the driver that is in form, I think the name that you should pop up here is Fernando Alonso. Fernando Alonso went off the boil a bit after his podium in Canada. He had somewhat average outings in Austria, Silverstone, Spa. Probably the car had a much bigger role to play in that, but again he was away from the spotlight. As soon as Aston Martin is back to its decent level, Alonso is doing a very impressive job. His drive in the wet was very impressive, and a return to podium as well was something that I did not expect coming into the weekend. As you can see from my preview and predictions as well, I didn't really think that Aston Martin would make such a big jump. Again, there are still question marks because both McLaren and Mercedes had a poor weekend in Zandvoort. So maybe still some questions there, but Alonso is a driver who's back on form, and if he has a good car, he will be very competitive. Now talking about a driver who's out of form, I think the name that comes up here is George Russell. In terms of performance, he was not doing too bad in Zandvoort. His qualifying was spectacular. In all honesty, getting P3 when your teammate has not even reached Q3, and especially when your teammate is Lewis Hamilton, that's a very impressive job. However, in the race, everything unraveled, and once again he had a DNF. Now if you look at the points gap between Russell and Lewis, it's getting bigger by the day. And for a driver who is touted as highly as Russell, this does not look good, and he probably needs to settle down and needs to start cutting into the gap that Lewis has built over the season. Next up, talking about the MVP of the weekend, I think it has to go to Charles Leclerc. Now, I agree that Max Verstappen is on the verge of beating Sebastian Vettel's record of 9 consecutive wins. But this is Monza. This is Ferrari's home, and Ferrari's lead driver will be in the spotlight. Everyone will be keeping a close eye on how Charles Leclerc fares, especially after the kind of weekend that he had in Dutch Grand Prix, and where he admitted afterwards that whether the car understays or overstays, even he cannot predict. So yes, the driver will be hoping to do the best that he can and maybe even try to emulate what happened in 2019, where he secured pole position and won the race. Okay, so now that we are done with the preview part, let's get to the predictions part of the video. Now, in the predictions part of the video, what I'm trying to do here is I'm not sharing or I'm not giving my prediction on an ex driver finishing in Y position or something like that. That's not really what I'm trying to do here. What my main objective is to give you a flavor of what you can expect this weekend. So I think I'll share my predictions and I'll let you be the judge of it. First of all, I have, well, in my view, this weekend in qualifying, even though there is rain forecast on Sunday, at least in qualifying, I feel Charles Leclerc and Ferrari is going to challenge Red Bull. Now, the reason behind it is, well, Ferrari's straight line efficiency. The car is very good in the low downforce configuration, and that is something that we've even seen in Spa, where Charles was able to secure pole position, and even in the race where he had decent pace to hold on to a podium position. Now, this weekend as well, I think Ferrari is going to challenge Red Bull, at least in qualifying. That is the least that I can expect. Do we see a repeat of Charles Leclerc securing another pole position? I think it could happen. There is a possibility that this might be on the table. Now, next up, when I talk about the race, I think Ferrari cannot keep up with Red Bull and Max Verstappen primarily in the race. And again, I'll expect Max to win the race and extend his race winning streak even further and break Sebastian Vettel's record. Next up, I feel both Mercedes and Aston Martin, they're going to fight amongst themselves as the third fastest car this weekend. I don't expect these cars to have the kind of straight line efficiency that Ferrari does. They didn't have it even in Spa. That was quite obvious. And even though on that track there were still some fast speed sections where Mercedes could make up ground on Ferrari. Also for Aston Martin, the team has claimed that it is bringing a lot of new parts and it is trying to get better in terms of the straight line efficiency. So yes, keep these things in mind. I feel the third fastest team, we are going to see a battle between Mercedes and Aston Martin, and probably a battle between Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso. Next up, talking about McLaren and Alpine. Well, in case of McLaren, I don't think it had enough time to develop a proper solution for the low downforce configuration. Last year, McLaren was still better in terms of what you could expect from the team at Monza and how it fared. It ended up scoring points. This weekend, I'm not entirely sure how McLaren's weekend unravels. The low downforce configuration for the car, even though Andreas Stella has claimed that the team will be bringing the solutions for that, I'm not sure if they are going to work enough, at least for now. And I feel the team might struggle as compared to Aston Martin and Mercedes this weekend. Talking about Alpine, the Renault power unit is going to prove to be a limiting factor here. Even though in Spa, the team did appear to have a strong pace, but again, even last season this happened. In Spa, Alpine was very impressive, but as soon as the team moved to Monza, where the power unit efficiency is arguably paramount, Alpine struggled. I feel it is going to struggle here as well. I might be wrong, but primarily if you're talking about the power unit efficiency, I think Alpine is going to have a struggle on their hands. Next up, talking about Williams, I think Williams is going to be the dark horse this weekend. Now, it was a bit of a surprise how well it performed at the Dutch Grand Prix. This weekend, I think this is probably one weekend where we can expect Williams to do well. A points is definitely on the table. We need to see how well Alex Albon and Logan Sargent will do. Okay, now here's a bold prediction. I expect Logan Sargent to secure a points finish at Monza. I don't know how he does it. He should be able to do it. He has the car capable of doing it. But I feel he's had quite a few crashes and it did feel bad to see him sitting after the race pretty much in his thoughts when his car crashed out. And yeah, cutting to the chase, I'm backing Logan Sargent to secure his first career points finish. Finally, now talking about the latest rookie on the F1 grid, I'm predicting that Liam Lawson is going to have a somewhat disappointing weekend. Now, much has been said about Liam. There are quite a few that rate him very highly. In my view, I feel he's even when both are fully prepared and everything is level, I feel Yuki Tsunoda is probably a bit better than Liam from whatever I've seen in terms of how Yuki was able to progress through the ranks in the junior categories while Liam took his time. That's where I stand on this. That's why I feel he might struggle a bit this weekend, especially because on the other side of the cockpit you have Yuki Tsunoda, who's doing a very impressive job in AlphaTauri and probably not getting the recognition that he deserves because the car is all over the place. So yeah, this concludes the preview and predictions for the Italian Grand Prix. What's your view? What's your take? Do share it in the comment section. Please like, share and subscribe if you're a new viewer. Thanks for watching and see you next time.